indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have the roll call?
Councilmember Boff.
Here.
Councilmember Stimmel.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn.
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny. Here. And Mayor Thornton.
Here. Thank you. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there's no request to move or modify the consent agenda, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the mayor's report. I have just a couple of items this evening. I'll go real quick. We've got quite a crowd here tonight, so I just want to mention to the council that the reader board is up and running. I think, yeah, it looks great. It's a big improvement from what we've had in the past. So we're just learning how to operate it, and our finance manager, Dustin Bailey, is in charge of that, so we'll be ready to put some more information up real soon. I also just want to say that on Saturday, March 2nd, Senator Rivers, Representative Larry Hoff, and Representative Brandon Vick did have a town hall here in the center in our chambers. It was well attended. I was really pleased that they were able to do that here in the center, and I'm definitely going to encourage them to do that more frequently as well. It turned out really well. So I appreciate their efforts. And then the final thing I want to mention is I know that Laura Martin, our Assistant City Clerk, is working with the council to try to come up with some dates for work sessions. I think she's sent out a doodle poll, but if we could please respond to that so we can schedule some work sessions. So that's all I have this evening, council. Next thing on the agenda is the attorney's report. Mr. Cairns?
I don't have anything noteworthy to report. The land use appeal is still pending. The parties have moved for an expedited review of the second GM Growth Management Hearings Board compliance order. There's going to be an argument on that motion. For some reason it's unopposed, and it should be consolidated with the underlying appeal and be stayed pending the outcome of the underlying appeal. I think that's set for argument in July sometime. And so we don't want to delay the underlying appeal just because we've now got this second compliance order on appeal up there.
Thank you. Any questions for the attorney? All right, moving on. Council member comments. Councilmember Boff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, the reader board looks really good, and coming down over the bridge the other evening, it was dark and the sign looked great. It was nice to see the city's logo showed on it as well, so that looked really good. Been busy since the last city council meeting. I attended an orientation for the Clark County Community Action Advisory Board. That was last week. CAB, as it's called by its acronym, is an organization within the Clark County Community Services, and it's an organization that focuses on anti-poverty, domestic abuse, and violence and homelessness issues. And CAB receives its funds from the federal, state, and local governments. 41% of the funding is received from the federal government, 23% comes in from the state government, and 37% comes from local governments, primarily Clark County. It's involved with the allocation of funds to nonprofits throughout the Clark County. At the last meeting, I mentioned to everyone that it's a board comprised of 12 people. I'm repeating myself for the benefit of those who weren't with the meeting last week, or 2 weeks ago, rather. And I attended my first full meeting yesterday, and it was an unusual meeting in the sense that CAB is going through presentations for funding for the next 3 years. And there were 19 10-minute presentations made, and The 19 different programs are asking for $2.7 million, and it's anticipated that only $1.5 million will be available. So there will be an evaluation process. In fact, there will be more presentations at the next CAB meeting, and then I will receive some additional training, and along with the other board members, we'll be making some decisions on how to allocate the $1.5 million among the 19 programs. So it's been a very rewarding experience. Even though I've only had 2 meetings, it's been extremely rewarding because it's giving an insight into areas that I've never had before. So I think that will be very valuable. CTRN had a board meeting last night, and as expected and will be for the next few months, the Mill Plain Boulevard bus rapid transit line will be the focus of discussions. Last month, CTRAN did receive approval from the Federal Transit Administration to move out of Phase 1 and to enter into Phase 2 of that program. So with board approval, CTRAN will now be a reimbursement for expenses associated with the Phase 2 projects. In the meeting last night, CTRAN did approve what's called the LPA for short, another acronym. That's the locally preferred alternative for each of each terminus at the new line. The alternative for the terminals was up in the air. There were a couple different options at each end, and the board went along with the recommended alternatives, and one being that on the western end of that line, that the buses will travel on Evergreen Boulevard and then move over and then turn down to Turtle Place. On the east end, CTRAN has decided not to go with the current transit center, which is down on 164th Avenue. They will be building a new transit center closer to 192nd Avenue. And then the board voted last night to officially begin Phase 2 of the project, and they'll be moving ahead on that. Another presentation that came up at the CTRAN meeting last night was there's a proposal for some significant service changes among the fixed routes. One of the two interesting ones, and I'm not going to bore you with all the changes that were proposed, but 2 of the more interesting ones is that route number 71 travels down Highway 99, and CTRAN is proposing to increase the frequency of those buses and to run those buses all the way down to the new waterfront, because CTRAN feels that there will be an increased ridership now that the waterfront is really taking hold and it's growing and it offers a number of services. And then another new route that is being proposed is to discontinue driving over the 205 bridge down to the Park Rose Max station. Instead, it's been proposed to have a direct line to go over 205, over the 205 bridge and go into Portland Airport. TriMet and CTRAN have been discussing that together, and both parties feel that there's a need to run a bus over to the airport. The renovation of the recently purchased admin building is on schedule, and the board chairman, Adrian Cortez, told us last night that he met with Governor Inslee up in Olympia, and Mr. Cortez expressed his disappointment to Governor Inslee about the governor's public comments supporting construction of light rail on the proposed I-5 bridge. So I was pleased to hear that. CTRAN, being a bus organization, is not in favor of light rail going on the proposed bridge. So, and that's all I have for tonight's meeting.
Very good. Great report. Thank you. And thank you for serving on those critically important boards. That's wonderful. Councilmember Stimmel.
So that should be a lot of fun.
Yep.
After that, it's pretty short. Maybe by 11, there's going to be games on all fields, or from T-ball, I'm guessing all the way up to majors, maybe even the bigger kids. But Smoke and Frank's will be there. We have the best snack shack food probably in the county. Get yourself a plate of barbecue, watch a game, support your local kids. Bet you there'll be a ton of kids out there selling pepperoni sticks. We've got, I don't know, thousands to sell. So try to support them. Your kids will be out there too. I'd love to see a bunch of people out there Saturday, March 23rd at 10 o'clock. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's not this next Saturday.
One after, 23rd.
Yep, right. 23rd. Okay. Yep, very good. Councilmember Williams.
I'll make it easy, Mayor. I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Strobehn.
No comment tonight, thanks.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Let us continue. I don't have a great deal to report.
Okay, very good. Next on the agenda are staff reports. We do have two staff reports in the council packet this evening. One from Chief Denny with police advisor for March 2019. And the first watch stats, Chief Denny is absent this evening and excused, so he's not here to give his report. If you do have any questions on his report, he'll be back on Monday, and feel free to call him, or if you have any questions, you can forward them to me as well. But you do have his report. And then also, there's a Public Works report. Unfortunately, our Public Works manager went home ill this afternoon, so he's not here as well. So, again, reports are pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, please reach out to the individual managers, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Being a woman, I guess I have the opportunity to change my mind here.
Yes, you do.
In the police report, there was information about the increased issues of speeding about and the new roundabouts. And I would, with the attendance tonight, like to encourage everyone to really talk to your friends and neighbors to keep their speeds down so we can avoid any accidents, any injuries. It's new to everyone. We were getting, the increased traffic coming into town, so let's all be cognizant of that and keep our speeds down. It's really important.
Thank you. Alrighty, with that, are there any questions that on the staff reports that I might be able to address, or are you okay to wait to talk with the managers if needed? Okay. Next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. We do have several cards here this evening for citizens' public comment, so this is the time allotted for citizens to make public comment to the council on items not on the agenda. So if you have a comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes. The council will not be interacting with any of the people that want to address the council this evening. We do have a procedure set up this evening. There'll be 2 cards, a yellow card or somewhat yellow and a red card. Our clerk will raise a 30-second card when there's 30 seconds remaining. When the red card is raised, then your time is up, and if you could please conclude your comments at that time. And if any action is required or requested, the matter will be referred to staff and taken up and handled at a future time. So with that, again, I have quite a few cards here. I'll start with the first one, and we'll get through it. I know some of the people that want to speak are out in the lobby as well, so when we call their name, if you could please make room for them to come in and state give us their comments as well. So the first one I have, and I'll do the best I can with names, I apologize in advance. The first one is Eric Hargrave. So,
Pronounce that perfectly, thank you.
Oh.
My name is Eric Hargrave. I'm a resident of Washougal, Washington. I run a business out there. It's called Limitless America. I've had quite a few customers from the center and the Clark County area, and I'm trying to ask the council tonight is for some leadership about becoming a Second Amendment sanctuary city. I just want to read the document that I handed out to you guys. It says, whereas the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And Article 6, Section 2, this Constitution and the laws made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. And whereas Article 1, Section 2 of the Washington State Constitution declares the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. And whereas Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution further guarantees the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. And whereas Article 1, Section 32 of the Washington State Constitution declares a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to the security of individual right and perpetuity of free government. Whereas the United States Supreme Court has declared a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. See Marbury v. Madison, 1803. and an unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. See Norton v. Shelby County. Whereas the United States Supreme Court has declared the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes such as self-defense within the home. See District of Columbia v. Heller. Whereas we the people, in regard as inalienable their natural right of self-defense, constitutionally guaranteed by the right to keep and bear arms, and further in its exercise derive economic benefit and enjoyment in all safe forms of manufacture, commerce, recreation, hunting, and shooting. And whereas the myriad of measures imposed by government that criminalize lawful gun ownership do in their substance and effect infringe upon the impaired, the constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear arms is exercised by law-abiding citizens, inhibit lawful self-defense, do nothing to increase security in our schools and homes, nor address gang violence. And whereas the County Council of Clark County and the City Council members of the Center are elected to represent the citizens within their respective jurisdictions and are duly sworn by their oaths of office to support and defend the state and federal constitutions. Now therefore be it resolved, the Clark County Republican 18th Legislative District and the citizens of the Center call upon the said city council members to declare their respective jurisdictions to be a Second Amendment sanctuary for the protection of law-abiding citizens, exercising of their constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear arms, and further to make a public statement that no sheriff, police chief, agent, employee, or official of their respective jurisdictions provide material support to or participate in any way in enforcement of an act, order, rule, law, or regulation repugnant to the constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear arms exercised by law-abiding citizens of the Center, Washington. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Ethan Inman.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Inman. I live here in the Central Washington, 310 West Half Avenue. I've lived here in the center for over 7 years, and I've voted for most of it. I thank you for taking the time to listen to me tonight. And I'd love to read this whole thing over again, but it's so long, and I bit my tongue earlier today. I want to tell you that when I got my first gun, I was 8 years old. It was a Ruger 1022, a little woodstock, 10-shot mag. It was the greatest Christmas present I ever got, and I still have that gun today. According to I-1639, that gun is now going to be classified as a semi-automatic rifle. Not only a semi-automatic rifle, but a semi-automatic assault rifle, because he converted with a pistol grip and had a dirty gun packet. I don't do this to my gun because I like it the original way. But if we're ever to break, and I have to get a new one, now I have to get training. I have to be registered as an assault rifle owner because I wanted to replace my childhood gun. That doesn't seem right to me. And I'd really like to have your support in supporting my Second Amendment right to bear arms. I really would. So if you guys could consider the center to be a sanctuary for us owners that are worried about more of our rights being taken away, rights that I have that were given to me by God, my mother, and my father, not just the Constitution. That's according to them. It's a very important right, just like my right here. I've never been to a city council meeting. I recently went, and I was inspired. So I found my voice, and I decided to come here to my hometown and speak. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have here is for Mr. Joey Gibson.
Okay, thanks for having us here today. Appreciate it. We're very thankful for your time. The first thing that I want to talk about is we're at a point in our country right here, right now, where we're going to have to pick sides. Everybody's going to have to pick sides. You're going to have to be for the people, or you have to be for a bigger government that's going to continue to take away our rights. That's where we're at right now. And the problem is too many people have been silent for too long. People have been not taking any action, and that's allowed for government to grow and continue to take away more of our rights. We have to get people involved, okay? We have to have people to speak up. And I'm here to stand up for the people of the center and ask you guys to bring a sanctuary city for the Second Amendment here, because they will continue to grab our guns over and over and over again. If this gets shot down in court, which I don't think it will, they're going to keep pushing more and more. And the thing is, Seattle and Olympia have been running cities like La Center for far too long. The people in Seattle don't understand what it's like to be out here in La Center. They don't understand what it's like to be out in Klickitat County. But yet they're still trying to tell us how we can purchase firearms. Here's the biggest problem, okay? We have, basically you have to sign away your right to privacy, your medical privacy. Okay, so you become a second-class citizen if you want to exercise your Second Amendment right. And somebody in a back room is going to determine whether each and every single one of you have a right to the Constitution, have a right to the Second Amendment. And we don't know what for. Is it because you're on antidepressants? Is it because you have PTSD and they're going to go after the veterans just like the VA did during the Obama administration? How is it possible that they're going to do this? We're giving that much power to this government and we don't have thousands of people marching in the streets. They're taking away our God-given right here with 1639, right under our noses. And I'm asking you guys to stand up, to be leaders, and to say we're not going to require the La Center Police Department to come in to people's houses and to take their guns without due process. That's all we want. We just want due process. We want the police to have a warrant. That's it. That's the Constitution. 1639 doesn't require a warrant at all. It doesn't require due process. And here's the other problem. We don't even know who's going to determine who can have guns and who can't. Is it going to be lawyers? Is it going to be doctors? This law was so poorly written, and it's open, and it's going to give the government so much power. So I'm asking you guys, okay? We understand what's happening right now. They want to take away our guns, okay? One every single year, just more and more and more. And this is even before 1639. The Second Amendment's already been trampled all over. So I'm asking you guys to take back that Constitution, take back the Second Amendment, and bring it back into the center. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker card I have is from Ms. Nelda Perryman.
Mayor, council, and fellow citizens. My name is Nelda Perryman. I live at 824 East Pioneer Loop, and I am a law-abiding American citizen. The Second Amendment gives me the right to keep and bear arms. Men and women have been losing their lives to give me this right and are continuing to lose their lives to let me have this right. I am not a gun freak. I am a responsible, law-abiding American citizen gun owner. If someone comes to your door and says or demands that you turn your firearm over because it will make America safer, you're kidding yourself. There are millions of guns in America. And if you think the bad guys are going to turn their guns over, think again. In my opinion, the Jews would not have gotten onto those rail cars had they been armed. I wouldn't have. People say, oh, that'll never happen again. Guess what? History repeats itself. I will defend my right to defend myself, my family, and friends. If anyone from the government tries to deny me this right, they will come up face to face with an armed citizen. The Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights was rightfully deemed important enough to be the second, not the 27th. Thank you. Be safe. And it's your Constitution. not our Constitution.
Thank you. The next card I have is for Jeff Merritt. Jeff Merritt.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I live just out of town, bottom 82nd. Okay, so I pay for school taxes, I pay fire, whatever we get hit with, we get hit with. But I'm a veteran, and when I went into service, there was no talking about taking away our gun rights or our First Amendment or any of our other rights. Free speech, hence we're here talking now. So what I'm asking, as a taxpayer, who shops in this town, buys gas and groceries, what have you, that you at least consider it to protect our gun rights, because if you don't, the county's already said they're not gonna, all right? And the city of Vancouver, they've said, oh, we're not gonna either. Well, they're the big brother in our neighborhood, right? You're my neighbors. I was there for you, be there for me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have here is for Steve, and I can't really read the second name. It's Dino or Dino. It's from 2610 East. Okay. Oh, well, we got you up here, Steve, so that's the important thing.
Thanks for having me, it's great. Okay, what if I told you that I can prove to each and every one of you standing right here, you cannot apply 1639 to a county? It just won't work. You ready? Got your attention? Fourth page, where it says they're going to train us all and give us a certificate of training. Everything's all good until we get the last one to the fifth one, where it absolutely says we will learn the state of Washington laws and the federal laws. Well, this can't be changed. You either know them all, or a nice city attorney that's going to step up, or a sheriff that says, well, we'll redefine the law. Well, the Attorney General's office already told you they couldn't and wouldn't. You know what they said when I said, hey, we need this curriculum? Guess what letter they sent me? Go see your attorney. You know what my attorney said? How do you want me to redefine the law that can't be redefined for 2 years? Now, Mr. City Attorney, did I get your name, Daniel? Mm-hmm. Did you want to redefine the law for us so we can apply it?
No.
Thank you. Did any of you want to do that? The sheriff here?
No, the sheriff's not here.
Can you email me my email address is stevedrury1963@yahoo.com. If any of you have an idea how we're going to break the law to apply the law, I work with Joey, and that's what I do. And Sheriff Dave Brown from Community County asked us, can you guys help us because we need this certificate? That's our findings. The law cannot be applied. Okay? It's that simple. So, then we have some other issues about 1639 that isn't working real well. Okay? You know they want to restrict your ammunition? You know that, right? Yeah. That makes my alarm button go off. You? What it means is they're going to take your firearms. It's not even a statewide agenda, it's a global agenda. And guess what? You're the only thing standing in the way. You're the only thing. City councils, county commissioners, sheriffs, and people. Well, I got some really bad news for people that want us to take our rights. Is people are getting pretty revved up about it, and not in a good way. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming on board. I saw my first article today from the Washington Post that's talking about civil war. My question to you, do you want to egg that on, or do you want to diffuse it? It's up to you. It's up to the county. It's up to the sheriff. It's up to the people are going to react. There's no way around it at this point. You're not going to be able to talk your way out of it. None of it. Bob Ferguson, he's going to be tried. You watch. He has stolen the people's Second Amendment rights by trickery. We can prove it. There's more than one trick in that 1639. We've found lots of them. 3 minutes is tough. So what we'd like to do also is get a forum maybe to the side, a workshop. You know, that's usually where we can bring out some real ideas and some real solutions. And the people, you know, are going to increase. I will tell you, as it comes time to implement 1639, there won't even be standing room. Thousands of people are jumping on websites and joining Patriot Prayer and watching the 3%ers.
Thank you.
Hope you make the right decisions for all of us.
Next card I have here is for Aaron Riley, or Riley? Riley? Riley?
My name's Aaron Rayleigh. I live at 3202 Northeast 401st Circle. That's just outside town here in the community. And appreciate having the time here to speak. You hear a lot tonight about 1639. You hear a lot about the Second Amendment. There's a lot more having to go on here. It's taking, infringing and impairing on our rights that we're all concerned with. I picked this up outside here, the annual report here for the center. And one thing that I noticed is an officer accommodation here for Alex Martinez. He had made an arrest here recently on a stolen vehicle and had done some good police work here. The one thing that I noticed in this article is that one of the things that they captured here is that he had ensured that he followed criminal procedure and the requirements of the Fourth Amendment. So he's talking about the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And it's showing that even at a local level, this is important. This is the rights that you have, that I have, that we all have. We have Fourth Amendment, we have Fifth Amendment rights. It's not just people who are guilty of crimes that get convicted that have these rights. And the police operating within this, they do good things. They don't violate rights of people who are within their rights. You know, it concludes down here in this article saying his actions during this incident have brought honor to the department. So here you have a representative in law enforcement, a leadership role in the community who has followed the U.S. Constitution. He's brought honor to the community. Well, that's the same thing that we're looking for here. You know, there's 1639. There is a whole pile of bills up there in Olympia that are infringing upon our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, our Fifth Amendment rights, our 10th Amendment rights, our 14th Amendment rights. Yes, they may be related to guns, but they're related to all of those rights. Case in point, the 14th Amendment is what says that states cannot enact laws that the federal government is given authority to govern over by the Constitution. It specifically says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved for the states respectively or to the people. Okay, the 14th Amendment was used in a very landmark case of civil rights, right? Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954. The states enacted a law of segregation in the schools. But what the Supreme Court found is that the state did not have that right because the 14th Amendment also protected the rights based on race. And so what I'm asking is that you support this resolution tonight and honor and respect our Constitution, just like we recognize law enforcement for already doing in our community. So stand up for us.
Very good. Thank you. Next I have is Robert Friend. Far enough.
My name is Robert Friend, 64 years old. I should be home having dinner. But I went to Battleground, and I went to Clark County, and now I'm here. My family, we came out here when I was 12 years old. I used to live about 40 feet right behind us to the south here, in Mr. Huss's rental house. Here's why I'm here. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. And I feel it's my duty as a 64-year-old man to stand up and speak up. And I'm also considering running for public office this year so I can stand up and speak up and get more than 3 minutes. Because I can stand here and talk to you people about the history of this country for an hour straight. We were incorporated by FDR in 1933. So I'm glad to see there's not a gold fringe on that flag because it means incorporation. Most people don't understand that, but they did it by our birth. About this gun law business, the statistics, which 90% are foreign-owned corporations that own our media. So we're public indoctrinated useful idiots, is what it boils down to. And they say we're third in the world as far as murders. But here's a fine, interesting fact. If you take out Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and New Orleans, those 5 places that have the strictest gun laws in the United States, we go down to 189th out of 193 countries. Kind of interesting. So you wonder, what's their agenda here? Well, I want the truth and I study history. So the truth is, this massive surveillance state that are perpetuated upon us is not about finding some terrorists. It's about protecting somebody from us, the people. The militarization of our police, it's not about like protecting us from any terrorists. It's about protecting somebody from the people. And as far as stopping crime or protecting children, that's a bunch of BS. It's about making us dependent on somebody for our survival. That's not right. We need to stand up and do something about it. And Mr. Attorney, if you look under Black's Law, what a citizen is, it'll tell you we're a corporate entity of a foreign, mostly foreign-owned corporation, which they incorporate our Constitution. So when you go and you say, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, yeah, right. There goes your Constitution. That Constitution was made for the government, not for the people, for to restrain them. And you guys as elected here in town, you need the guts to stand up like our forefathers and make a stand and say, hey, we're free, we have our rights, we have the right to protect ourselves. You know, and they want to put your gun in the safe, or if somebody steals it, you're going to be a crime. They want to make us criminals. They want to make us felons so we can have a gun. 30 seconds, yeah. That's about ludicrous. I mean, what? You just have to stand up and look where we're going. And if I run for public office, then I'll have maybe 5 minutes. And I can explain about how we all got incorporated from our birth, our driver's license, our birth certificate, our marriage, about our passport. You're a corporate citizen. That's not good. Most people don't know that. Pick up for a second amendment, please. Okay, I'm going home for a drink.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Next card I have is for Kathy Reed.
I declined because I didn't realize it was, if it was not on your agenda, what I'm concerned about is on the agenda.
Okay, very good. Yep, good catch. Thank you. Next one's for Joshua Van Gilder. Joshua Van Gilder.
My name is Joshua Van Gelder. I'll try to keep it fairly brief. I live in Battleground right now. I've lived out on the east side of Clark County for most of my life. And I recently got married. I'm planning to start a family. I was excited to start a family in the greatest country in the world, but what I'm seeing now is our country is sliding backwards to exactly what our forefathers were fighting against, which is tyranny and oppression and no rights for the people. And so what I'm here in support of the Second Amendment sanctuary city, because I believe 1639 is an issue, but that's not the real issue. The issue is that the government is coming in and trampling our rights, the rights that are given by God, not by the government, not by the Constitution, but given by God to each and every person. And so what I'm here asking and begging the council to support their constituents and everyone around in the county and the state as well, because it's gone too far and it's time for us to push back. The Second Amendment is there not to hunt or to have some fun and target shoot, but it's to prevent tyranny and to protect our First Amendment rights. And so if we lose the Second Amendment, we lose our First Amendment shortly after. We've seen this in Germany, we've seen this in Russia, we're seeing this right now in Venezuela, where people are being killed because they cannot defend themselves. They thought it was great to give up their guns, but now they are being killed. They're starving. The government is not there to support them. The government is there to support itself. So we need to take a stand now before it's too late. We're here peacefully. We're here to appeal to you and other councils around to be able to make a difference while we can. We will defend ourselves if this goes further. If they come after us, we will defend ourselves, but we don't want that. We want our country to stay how it was founded and to stay there peacefully. So we are begging the council to support this initiative and following. Thank you.
Next I have Nate Howard. Nate Howard.
Hello, y'all. Thank you for your time. My name is Nate Howard, and I'm a lifelong Clark County resident. Growing up in rural Clark County, firearms of all types were of common use. Self-defense, hunting, killing livestock, and of course a fun way to spend time with family and friends. When I-594 passed, it made it much more difficult to share your firearms with family and friends. I was upset, but remained silent. But now, with the passage of I-1639 and its blatant disregard for federal and state constitutional supreme law, I can no longer remain silent. I'm sure most of you have heard the quote, "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent." I have faith that local government will hear the facts and know I-1639 can only be recognized for the corrupt legislation that it is, and they too will let their voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card I have is for Phil Hogan.
Hi, my name's Phil Hogan, live in Clark County, have a business in Battleground and work in this area. Love the center. I really want the council to just formally announce that they're seriously investigating the sanctuary city idea. And for all the honest, law-abiding citizens, I agree with the previous speakers. And I think if you publicly announce this, it would comfort the citizens of this county and show your due diligence to serve and protect. It's a controversial subject, but I think it'd be a good thing. It'd show the city is concerned for our safety and our constitutional rights. I think this would attract honest citizens, gun owners, and discourage criminals. It'd be good for business, good publicity for the center. And thanks again for letting us speak up.
Thank you. Next card I have is for Aaron Babcock.
Hello, guys. Thank you for your patience through all this long process. I'm from Cowles County. I did have a friend from the center. I met him, try to keep this really quick. When I was 15, he introduced me to the Shotgun News, and he inspired me into music, and I got into a band, and I lived my American dream already. In 10 years, I was in a band. So I achieved it, and I see our Bill of Rights. I'm into American history for 20 years, and I've worked at lumber mill for 10, but I only missed 2 days of work in 20 years. But I left work to go to the Board of Commissioners, kind of like what you guys do here, and presented a case. I was asked to be there because our rights are getting taken away. Deprivation of rights under the code of law, the U.S. codes. It's Title 18, yada yada. But the thing is I saw these Second Amendment sanctuary county ordinances, and it's all constitutional, lawyer approved. 8 of the 10 counties in Oregon did it. I saw the template and the New Mexico one, and Clickitats looking at it, and we have supported resolutions passed in 5 or 6 counties or more in Washington State already to support this ordinance. And I hope you guys review the template. And the Republican Party is getting on board with the resolutions, but a final draft is really needed. I have copies of it for Clark County. I'm going to give a copy to every sheriff, just because technology takes a long time, and these laws that are implemented to take people's rights away is like July 1st, and it can be really scary. The people are panicked, and they want to stand up for themselves. We've had home invasions, and women need to be armed when they're abused. They've been abused sexually, mental, physical, and they arm themselves to detour crime. They're open carry, which is Washington State law by the Constitution, Washington State Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 24. And when a woman, after she's been abused, carries that firearm, she feels a little bit better, I'm sure, but it won't happen again. It's a fight for a living chance to survive, and so it never happens again. And so when people look at a woman with a firearm on her side, they're like, nah, I'm not going to abuse her. I'm going to think twice. They're trying to take that type of stuff away. They say all firearms have to be locked up. The stay-at-home mom that wrote to the Senate and the House, it was about home invasion. If you are forced by the government to lock your stuff up and your firearms are stolen, you're a criminal. That's unconstitutional and is illegal. It violates the Fourth Amendment right to privacy rights too. And then if they take the second, they'll take the first, second, third, all the way down. We are a constitutional republic of Washington State, and I'm asking you guys to be all on the same board with the Constitution and draft a Second Amendment sanctuary county ordinance, just like all the other counties are doing. And all be on the same page. All the sheriffs will have the same paperwork, and they'll all be on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next card I have is for Robert R. Rose, if I have that right.
I live just up on 41st Avenue here outside of the center. I'm a retired police officer, so I have a little bit of an idea of the internal workings of a department. I concur with what everybody else has said, so I won't rehash those points. A couple of points that I do want to bring out is what's going to affect you and affect the city of La Center with this new ordinance. No firearms will be purchased after July 1 without a concealed weapons permit. Right now, any state resident can go buy one. Very few people that own firearms have concealed weapons permits. But after July 1, they're going to inundate the local police department wanting permits. Permits take time, they cost a lot of money and manpower. So you're going to add a lot of burden to your department. Before releasing a firearm, a dealer will have to be notified in writing by the chief of police or the sheriff of that jurisdiction where the purchaser lives that he is approved. To be approved, that sheriff or chief of police is going to have to run a background check through NICS, state database, and health records. There is no database for health records in the state of Washington. So how much time is that going to entail with personnel in the department trying to run down all these records? They do provide that if a database is put together
through the Department of Licensing, that dealers can then go there and procure the information they need. But there is no database. Right now, for the last 40 years that I know of, the state of Washington has registered every firearm bought by a resident. Right now, they're over 3 years behind just entering a person's name with what weapon they bought. Where are they going to find time to build a whole brand new database? They provide a $25 tax on assault rifles only that can be raised, calculated biennium from statistics by the U.S. Department of Labor. But that's only on assault rifles. How much of that money that goes to the state on those taxes are actually going to come back to the city to help defer the cost that the police department is going to entail in running all of these checks? Another part of this new law is that everybody that purchased a handgun or an assault rifle will have to have a yearly background check done and health care check. And once again, there's no database. But they do say that the responsibility falls back on the local police and sheriffs until that database is made. I think you need to really look into it. It's just not they're coming after us and the Second Amendment, and once they destroy it, then they're going to go after the other amendments. It's just something extra to think about.
Thank you. Next card I have here is for Jesse Murray. Jesse Murray.
Accessible. So it is they need and want. Do it for me. Thank you. Here's an example of some of the things that the commission learned about or was learning about through their study last year of some of the barriers or challenges some neighborhoods face to access transit easily. You'll see there's a C-Trans stop, that red dot at Northwest 9th Avenue and 82nd Street. However, the person that lives in the cul-de-sac has to go all the way up and around to get to that transit stop, no matter that they can see it probably from their back window. So thinking about ways, is there something that could connect people that if we have these kinds of development styles that at least punches out a pathway for you to access the road more easily and get to transit a little bit better? So that's just one example that they studied. Thank you. Okay, number 4. The Human Services Council Reserve a Ride program, if you're not aware, links people with disabilities, elderly, low income, and those unable to use transit with many community transportation providers. However, due to limited funding, the council and other local providers can only meet those most urgent needs for life-threatening and life-sustaining medical appointments. However, many people have more needs than just getting to the doctor, and unfortunately those services can't provide those rides because of limited resources. Collaborating with private taxis, Uber, Lyft, and other nonprofit providers could help meet the need. However, training to work with vulnerable populations would be key to making these partnerships possible. 5, regarding technology, imagine making a single phone call or visiting a single website or phone app to find out all your transportation options and booking the option you choose through that site. Kind of like an Expedia or Travelocity for all types of transportation. The idea is known as mobility as a service or mobility on demand, and would bring all means of travel such as car share, public transit, paratransit, community transportation, Uber, Lyft, taxis, bike share, whatever it might be, all together into a single service that individuals can subscribe to. Now imagine that this mobility as a service application has options for you to specify if you use a wheelchair or you need extra assistance, so that your results are customized to fit your needs. And otherwise, there's options for allowing, if you're not comfortable with using a computer, and still being able to call on demand. If designed universally, the mobility as a service could be extremely helpful for those with disabilities and those who do not drive and live in rural areas. Building for those with barriers will ensure it serves everybody. We also learned about the emergence of autonomous vehicles, which will change the way we travel and will also impact land use, design, health, and the economy. Clark County, like many other U.S. counties, developed under a suburban land use pattern that separates its uses from one another. Housing subdivisions in one area, shopping centers in another, office parks elsewhere. All uses are typically traveled to by car. This pattern provides challenges to use alternative travel modes like walking and riding the bus, because the walking distance is too far to reach those destinations. So based on our findings, the COA, Commission on Aging, recommends policymakers address these 6 topics through policy and their various leadership roles in the community. So I'm going to pass it on to Amy, who's going to go over the Commission's recommendations, and then see what any questions you all might have for us.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for giving us some time to tell you what we've been doing, really on your behalf, on everyone in Clark County's behalf over the last year. I'm fairly new to Clark County. I moved here from a big city in Southern California that I don't even want to remember the name of, and I love being here. And one of the things I love is that the Commission on Aging is a very exciting entity that is charged with studying and then making recommendations to the County Council for how to improve the lives of elderly people in Clark County, specifically those who want to age in place. Is there anyone here who doesn't want to age in place, who's just dying to go into an institution to grow old? Okay, that's the point. We all want to stay in our homes, but if our homes are too far from the bus stop, too far from whatever we need to go where we want to go, it becomes a huge problem. The first recommendation has to do with pedestrian and bicycle-friendly and accessible areas. There are a lot of places in Clark County where there aren't sidewalks on both sides of the street, where there aren't sidewalks on some sides of the street at all, and pedestrians, wheelchairs, tricycles, all the ways that people want to get around without a car are more difficult if we don't have the streets to make it possible. So one of the recommendations is that when people come and say they want to build 150 houses on a little small piece of land in your town, you think about who's going to get from here to there and where they're going to be. Will there be streetlights? Will there be sidewalks? This is an example from the city of Tigard that we were shown. That's on the left and the right is before and after. Basically, there is no pathway between neighborhoods on the left, and when it was cleared up, there's a good pathway to get from one neighborhood to another, and that might include, as Jackie showed you, getting to a bus stop without having to take a circuitous walk around. I don't know how many of you have ridden buses in Clark County, but they're good, but they don't go everywhere, and they certainly don't go close enough to my house to make it viable for me unless I have a kind neighbor who says, can I drive you to the bus stop? Or some really more creative ideas that have been put in, are being talked about as being put in place. For example, you might not own your own car, you might be part of a whole neighborhood that has a fleet of cars that are dispatched for where you need to go. So you might put in, I need to be at the dentist in Portland at 9, but I need my son to get to school by 8:30, and it will be managed through the databases. I want to encourage you, by the way, that if you have time on a Wednesday afternoon, the third Wednesday of the month, we have experts coming to instruct us so that we can come up with the recommendations that we come up with at the end of the year. And it's a public meeting, and you're certainly invited at 4:30 to come and listen to who's there. Everybody seems to have a smartphone, and smartphones can be even smarter for us in terms of transportation. That's a driverless car. And the idea sounds weird or creepy, and the truth is, there are a whole lot fewer accidents with driverless cars than with cars that have human drivers. Because driverless cars don't have people who fall asleep at the wheel, and they're remarkably good. And the big car companies like Ford are pouring billions of dollars into developing these cars and the database transportation systems to make them work. One of our recommendations is to seek diverse funding sources. Can I move these? Can you go up one for me?
The next one, or back? Go back.
Go back, yeah, sorry. There we are. We need creative funding sources to accomplish more in terms of sidewalks, and we need streets where bicycles can have safe areas to ride within the street, where cars can find parking, not an easy task in downtown Vancouver, so that the streets are there for everybody. They're safe, and they can be, lots of people can use them in different ways. If you look in the book that we gave you on page 13, you can see that there are lots of different types of transportation. That's sort of a golf cart type vehicle, and Sam Claude is riding around in it because he needs more than just a sleigh as he gets older. We need to ensure that the zoning is there for the future visions of transportation in the community. We want to support current needs, and we want to support the growth of future needs, because the number of elderly in Clark County will be exponentially larger than it is now. We're just growing. And people like me are not retiring to Florida, we're retiring to Clark County. And we'll need services, as well as those who were born here or have the luxury of aging in Clark County. Are there any questions?
A lot of what you said sounded really similar to something we talked about, and I just got what it was because I couldn't think of it. Complete Streets?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Complete Streets? Is that
Yes.
somehow linked with the stuff you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely, we work with them.
And you guys-
And one of the presentations we had last year was on Complete Streets.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Very
Anything
good.
else you want to
Yeah, I just
add?
wanted to,
Go ahead.
so when you have a chance to kind of go through the end report and the recommendations, the commission kind of gave like a list of different options that you could consider with some of the recommendations. Because every community in Clark County is different in the way we're set up or how we are. So the approach this year was to just kind of do this laundry list. And these are some things you might want to think about and ways to improve pedestrian access or funding options. So take a look at those, and if there's any questions or anything you want us to come back and talk about something more specific, we're happy to.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Were you at the Clark County presentation a couple weeks ago?
Clark College?
At Clark
Yes,
College, I meant to
yes,
say?
the transportation
I thought you looked
summit.
familiar to me.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we capped off our year and had a summit and brought all the elected officials to come talk, and hopefully we'll maybe see some changes.
And that was done very well.
Good, thank you for coming.
Don't you think that some of these pamphlets should be going to the planning commission as well, so that they can
Sure.
look at incorporating some of this in future planning? You picked a perfect night because a couple of them are here.
Okay, great, well, we can send some up there, so when, get with you? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you.
Good point, okay.
That's just, that's the electronic copy of this. So if anyone wants it electronically or to share, you have the link.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you both
Thank
so
you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you.
And appreciate you coming out.
Yep.
Have a great evening. Next on the agenda is actually an ordinance, La Center Municipal Code 18.270.060, and its temporary housing needs. The council did have a presentation on this at our last meeting. Mr. Eisman is here again this evening, our contract city planner, and he will be presenting the ordinance to council.
Mayor,
Thank you.
members of the council, citizens, thank you for this opportunity to come back and talk to you about temporary needs housing. I was last year speaking with you February 27th, I believe it was.
Was it that long ago?
It was only 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And we had a good conversation at the council level about this topic. You offered some excellent food for thought and for conversation, and so I took that into the conversation that we had here 2 weeks ago, as well as a comment that Councilmember Boff provided via email, and went to the Planning Commission last night. Also spent some additional time speaking with the building official and looking at how other jurisdictions implement this type of a project, or this type of a code. So last night, we had a very good conversation with the Planning Commission, and they made some recommendations that I'd like to just present before you open the public hearing tonight. This proposal is slightly different than the one that you saw last time. And the primary issue is on page 1 of the proposed code. You can see, if we can scroll up just a little bit here.
Showing it.
Okay. Unless I can do it here.
The other way.
You should.
Oh, there we go, thank you.
Okay.
You should never trust me with one of these things. So the conversation, one of the conversations we had last time at the council was the scope of the proposed needs ordinance. And last time we talked about medical needs, mental health needs, financial needs, age-related needs, and went back and looked at the intent of the reason we came forward with in the first place, and narrowed the scope of the proposed, those people who would be eligible to follow this, to the following: that the caregiver would be a resident of the principal property, that the care is related to the caregiver by blood or marriage, that the care recipient has limited mobility or unable to perform one or more of the daily supporting activities, such as those, and that there's a need for a documentation of a statement of infirmity, need for the care from a professional medical provided license.
On the
licensed by the state.
first item there,
Yes.
caregiver is a resident of the principal dwelling. What is the principal dwelling? Is that the house that's already on the
That's the
property, or
house
is that what we're talking about?
The house that's already on the property.
That wasn't clear to me when I read that.
Yes. So in order to come forward to be eligible to this, there has to be a house on the property. And now this proposal is to bring in a temporary house on the property. Primary house still stays there.
Okay, the word principal, to me, was ambiguous.
Okay, we can change that.
Yeah.
Easily.
See, the notion here is this is an accessory use. It's accessory
Oh,
to
I got it.
an underlying
Yeah.
dwelling.
But I didn't know if because we were talking about temporary housing, if temporary housing was the principal dwelling.
It's not allowed to be.
No, but
You can't have a
it was
standalone
just,
accessory.
to me, the word, it was ambiguous because the whole thing was about temporary housing. And then we're talking a principal dwelling, is that the temporary house? That's all. I think a little wordsmithing in there.
Okay.
Primary.
I just wrote down the word primary.
Primary residence.
Yep.
That'd be,
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we struck that of the other language that I mentioned that had different types of eligibility criteria, simplified it to medical care provider, and made a couple of quick adjustments in the code just to make sure that there's consistency, particularly on the last page, the statement under our section verification of the need, a statement signed by the licensed principal medical care provider. I'm gonna try to scroll that down.
on page 2,
On page 2.
scroll back up.
All right.
There was a couple of things in there. I read it and I didn't think it was physically possible.
I'm having a difficult time with this one.
Just scroll up for him. Can you scroll that up a little?
There we go. It's a little slow.
Okay, a little farther.
I'm working on it. That works, I'll try the other one here.
We just had the Council on Aging thing here.
There we go.
Whoa, there we go.
Okay.
Item C, a temporary housing unit may be a single wide manufactured, blah, 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 with a maximum dimension of 18 feet. I've never seen a single wide 18 feet wide. I've seen 14 feet, I've seen 12 feet, I've seen 8 feet. But I've never seen something going down the highway 18 feet wide. Even I couldn't move buildings that big when I moved them.
I pulled that number off of a website for a manufactured company, manufacturer.
Okay, well, but is it
That was the
two
biggest single
modules
line.
put together to get
The
18
biggest
feet?
single line that they made.
Yeah, I would agree. I found the same thing.
You found the same one?
Yeah.
You found something that said 18 feet?
18, in fact, actually, the website I found said 18 by 90 is considered maximum standard.
Maximum standard.
For a single?
For a single.
For a single, exactly.
Never seen one. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine,
that
if it exists. And then farther down on B, about the electrical.
Yes.
110 volt, 30 or 50 amp circuit breaker. I think the 50 amp designation's a 220 volt circuit. No, you found something like that? Because I know in RVs, a 50 amp connection's 220 volts.
That was discussed by the planning commission members who had these.
Okay,
have knowledge.
that's fine.
Yep.
Okay. And actually, 18 by 90 is 16, comes to 1620 for what it's worth.
There's me by that.
Okay.
So extra. So with that, those are the only changes that we made. The next thing that we looked at is, right there. So I looked at other jurisdictions and how they administer this process, because I know we have a small staff and trying to keep this as simple as possible. So I found what I consider to be the most burdensome process out there, and tried to simplify it, okay? So that I could capture all the bases that we might come up with. And we prepared, I don't need to go through this, but we basically prepared a form that we could adopt administratively, not at the council level as part of this, that shows how this would be administered by your staff, the kinds of questions that we would ask of people, again, reiterating the types of units that are allowed, gathering some information on who's going to be in the primary dwelling and what their relationship is to the person who will be receiving the care. Same thing, those who will be in the temporary dwelling and what their relationship is. Gather some general information about the new structure. And then also find out, is there somebody else? Do you have a backup plan? Is there somebody else you can call if necessary? And are they nearby? That's just one simple question. Another one, why do you need this permit? Just give us, in your own words, an explanation of why you need this. The county that I looked at, they were much more invasive in the questions, so we tried to make it open-ended. And then we also wanted to make sure that there was access between the primary and the secondary dwelling, the temporary dwelling, so that you're not walking out in the middle of the night having to ford a creek to go get to the manufactured home. So is there access? What's the access like? Again, trying to consider about the needs of the people who are going to be living here. Again, access to a septic, driveways. Driveway spacing is important because on primary highways, you want to limit the number of driveways that come out onto La Center Road, for example. So we want to that people will be able to get in and out. And then just some other information about additional permits that you will have to go get. Electrical permits, perhaps a building permit, perhaps a county health permit for septic expansion if necessary. And then also a form that says, here's what you give to the primary, to the professional healthcare provider. This is what we're asking of you. We need this type of a statement. We're not asking what the need, exactly what the medical need is, but certify that there is a need. All right. And then who's the patient? What's their current address? Because there is a temporary dwelling, won't be the current address yet. And then just what are the basic functions that are going to have to be provided here? Bathing, eating, dressing, routine shopping, toiletry. One other thing that's important about this piece is that it makes the definition of care provider clear, that it's not someone who's there to take care of the lawn, who's going to take care of the roofing or anything like that. It's to provide personal care to the person who needs the support.
Are you violating HIPAA with that?
Don't think so.
I was just thinking,
We're trying not to.
Yeah, I'm just, you're
pretty close,
You're getting in there
Yeah.
because you're asking about
I run
that kind
HIPAA
of
compliance
information.
IT, and that's really
And-
pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
I'll clear that down with the city attorney before we adopt a form like that.
Even your service animal, if you walk into an airport with a service animal, it's not appropriate. You can't ask, what's this animal do for you?
I'll give you the name of the county that you sometimes look for that has this form.
Hey, one thing about your form, Eric,
Yes, sir.
go to the top of it.
You're asking a lot.
I know, it's tough. Spoil me. It's just a finger exercise. No, all the way, temporary need dwelling. I didn't see an address.
Oh.
Proposed address.
There was nothing on there. No, not that one. At the other end. All the way to the top. Come on, Eric, sometime today.
I have a hard copy. He's right. There needs to be a line for it.
Yeah, there's no.
There need to be a line for the address of
Right,
this.
well, this is
There's a plot plan fee, well, there's an application form.
Oh, there's another form.
There's a
Okay.
general City of La Center
Gotcha.
land use
Oh,
form
okay.
that you would fill out.
Okay, I just didn't know where you referred to as where this thing's located at.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
One, did the chief and the fire department have a chance to look at this?
The chief of police and fire have not. I did talk to the building official.
I'm just wondering if they see any additional information or contact numbers that they may need for, if there are additional calls to the address, just to make sure that they are in that circle of, so they can provide the best care.
Would they have access to that information too? Like, let's say it's 3 o'clock in the morning?
Just at an initial glance,
Yeah.
at least if they have the chance to look at it from the fire department and the police department perspective. I mean, I can't sit here and say it incorporates everything they would really like to see.
In terms of, you're talking about this in terms of the form or the code itself?
A little of both, really, in terms of, is there any aspect they would like to see at any stage to make sure, first of all, maybe they could work with the property owner to make sure some of those fire department equipment or that's going to be responding can get in easily in and out to both the primary residence and the dwelling, the accessory dwelling.
Okay, there would be a city,
I would imagine that is encompassed in the permitting process.
in the building permit or the manufactured home placement permit, the location would be specified and the access would be specified, but I'll be happy to talk with the chiefs.
I'm just thinking, long-term, do they want to at least be involved in knowing, do they have the appropriate equipment that should be locally?
If it was a manufactured home placement, it's going to be reviewed by the fire district, it's going to be reviewed, if it's stick-built, it'll be reviewed by the building department, but I can certainly run this past the chief.
Yeah, just a general overview.
That's all I have to say.
Eric, I have a question. I noticed that, is there any, there's no minimum age on here,
We
right?
took the age out, we had a long conversation about that last night, and decided that the point of this is to provide, just help someone who has a medical need, it doesn't matter how old they really are.
Yeah, no, I would agree, yeah. that's great.
Or how young. I do want to say one last thing, I'm really proud of what the planning commission did last night, they worked really hard, they were very focused, and I think they gave you a better product than what I brought
Yeah,
you last night.
I think it's much, it encompasses all of our concerns that I heard raised.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
So council, any comments, discussion before we open up the public hearing?
I had one question. Eric, when I talked to you about this before, you indicated there was this would be restricted to large lots. What is there a zoning limitation is?
It would be allowed in low-density residential 7.5, that's the only low-density zone that we have, so only low density, and the lot has to be 1 acre or larger.
Okay.
On the, you mentioned water and electricity, you didn't mention fuel. Is temporary propane bottles allowed?
We didn't address that.
What, does it need to be?
That should probably be asked by the fire marshal. or
That's a great
anything.
question for the fire district.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Put that on the chalkboard.
It doesn't really, it's getting a little out of the realm of land use, though.
Can you define that? I didn't quite catch that. What did he say?
It's a little out of the realm of land use, it's more in terms of building requirements. Because this would have to meet either the building code or the setup standards for manufactured homes. And the source of fuel and that sort of thing is regulated through that avenue. It's really not well regulated through land use.
Well, what I was concerned about is somebody stood up on those 100-gallon propane tanks, and it's not restrained, it's just sitting there on a hose or a copper line. Is that a hazard? Versus, we got real picky-ish about the water has to be a hard connection, it can't be a hose. Electrical has to be a hardwire, but do we need to say anything about source of heat?
I'm really reluctant to put something like that in the land use code. I mean, there are.
No, I agree, it's building code. It's building code.
Requirements and setup requirements for manufactured homes are very strictly regulated, not in land use.
But why would this fall under that? This is something that's for temporary anyways. Can't we redefine something for temporary instead? I mean,
That would be contrary to the building code or the.
Should we
setup
just see
standards.
what the fire department suggests?
I think that on the building permits, I don't think that that's a problem identifying fuel sources. But I agree with you, Dan, in the code itself, that's a land use question. Fuel is not a question that we deal with on the land use side. But the building code,
Building code.
permit form itself.
But would it would require like a horizontal tank sitting on a pad versus I drive out to Amboy and Yakult all the time, and I see them sitting alongside manufactured housing, they're just sitting there, no seismic restraint or anything else. I'm just curious if it's something we need to at least examine the building code to see if there's a mention of it.
I don't see it mentioned in here that those sorts of standards need to be addressed and complied with. You don't want to restate them in your zoning code.
No.
But if you put in here a requirement that thou shalt comply with those, that's sufficient.
Agreed.
So something like that would be the way to go.
I just want to make sure we didn't skip it.
No, otherwise you'll get a lot of I think you all understand, this is far more frequently a county issue, a rural creature, and you don't see them within urban growth boundaries very much at all. I don't know too many cities that have them, but there aren't too many cities that I deal with that have a lot of kind of large lot area, rural sort of area that are still within city limits. So this is, I can't imagine it'll be very widely used, that's for
No,
sure.
no,
Not
agreed.
like you go to Clackamas County, there's a lot there. And also the thing that threw me too when I first saw this is, we've always called them health hardship dwellings. And it sounds like the planning commission has brought it more into conformance with that basic notion of these things.
Okay. All right, well, this is a public hearing, so at 8:10, I will open up for public hearing. If anybody would like to address the council on this, please step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please, that 3-minute rule. You've been so patient this evening, if you want to go longer than 3 minutes, go right ahead.
Okay, my name's Kathy Reed. I live at 31304 Northwest 8th Avenue. It's a Ridgeville address, but we are annexed to the center. And we're we're the beginning of all this because my mom is 86 years old and we're trying to get her a place to live on our property to take care of her. I printed out from home the current one, and I have a couple questions on it, if I may. On 3C II, it says a modular home not to exceed 700 square feet. We addressed that at the city planning meeting, and we agreed to change that to 1690, but I guess it'd be 1620, because why are we limiting it to 700 square feet, just because it's a modular home? Is that?
You are correct. We did discuss that at the planning commission meeting, and Mr. Nutrock was not there, but Chairwoman Dinah was there. But I do recall, am I missing something?
Oh.
But I do recall that we did talk about making them the same.
Okay, can that be,
It's up to them.
okay.
Yes, we did talk about it.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you. Also, on the manufacturer, I didn't know anything about the cooking system. 110 volt, does that eliminate a stove? Isn't a stove a 220?
A recreational vehicle, I don't know.
I'm not, well, this is limiting it to a recreational
Right,
vehicle.
manufacturer home or something like that as well.
If it's in an RV, it would be limited to a 110 volt, 30 to 50 amp circuit breaker is what the planning commission.
Okay, so that's only under the recreational vehicle.
If it is a recreational vehicle, yes,
Okay.
it's limited to that.
Thank you.
And then,
Also, on the application, there's a question that does another temporary dwelling for care exist on the subject? Yes or no? Well, the very beginning of the whole thing says it allows one. This temporary permit allows one.
but this is also a form that would allow you to renew. And so if you're renewing, you'd have to disclose that, yeah, if you're coming in, you'd have to disclose that it's already there.
But it says another temporary dwelling. There's a spot to distinguish whether you're renewing it or a new application.
We did that, I think, because if someone already had one and they wanted a second one, they don't.
But it says you can't have it. The
Yeah,
ordinance
it's a-
says one.
It's a trick question.
It's fuzzy now. Tell us the truth, okay?
I have a cave and it's got a dwarf living in it. Okay, that's pretty much it, I think. I just, again, appreciate all the effort you guys have put into this. It's getting closer for my mom. We've got to get her out of there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis Nutrock, 1509 Northwest 339th. Two things. First, I want to apologize to Councilmember Williams for butting in on your question. As soon as I opened my mouth, I knew I was inappropriate, so I apologize to you and Mary. Secondly, I was not at the meeting last night, but I note that in B1 where we say that the caregiver is the resident of primary dwelling, that then eliminates the possibility of the caregiver living in the temporary dwelling unit. And I know early on we discussed that as being going both ways. So that would prevent me from moving my RV onto my dad's property and providing that care. So that, I don't know if you guys talked about that or that was a conscious decision, but I just want to bring that up.
Thank you for that, because I wanted to address that as well.
It was presented to the planning commission last night. We did discuss how this should be organized, and I believe the consensus was that this should, as drafted, is what the planning commission recommended. You disagree?
I don't.
This is, Councilmember Boff might want to jump in because that is his language right there.
How's the bottom of that bus look?
I'll take it. So we have it's public, it's right now, we're still absolutely pleased, yeah. We're still in public comment.
Well, because this is the concept of many, many people other than myself, for our situation, it is work according to that. But what you said is very apropos also. We talked about that. Whereas if, like, ideally, where my mom lives, it's a family homestead. I would love it if I could just move up there and hang out on her place and keep that in the family. But that's not able for us. But it could be for someone else. And to have that limited, I mean, that just cuts in half the opportunities for people to use. To say that the caretaker has to be the principal, in the principal residence, whereas it could be the needy, the care needing person be in the principal residence and the caretaker be in the temporary dwelling.
Well, I guess over time, I would also see the potential of having a paid caregiver also be a part of that environment, because what if both of the the resident, you, for example, and you both have jobs, and if there's someone there to take care of, I guess I wouldn't want to limit it.
If you look at subsection B2 right there, the care recipient is related to the caregiver by blood or marriage. That doesn't mean you could pay that relative to do the work, but this is limiting the caregiver to also familiar.
And it just seems a little.
I agree with Liz on that. I think the language is a little vague there, or cut and dry, and it needs to open up a little bit, allowing it to go both ways.
Let me throw one other variation in there. What happens if, for instance, using this family as an example, your mother lived in your house, but you had a nurse that lived in a temporary dwelling? That spin could happen also. It would take care of her while you're gone. And that nurse would be a paid employee or possibly a compensated employee rather than a blood relative.
Because in these situations, my mom has Parkinson's, and there's a lot of things that over time happen with all of our aging parents and ourselves for that matter. So I'd rather see us kind of massage that language that would work for all the different types of situations we'll probably be dealing with going forward. I know we can't capture everything, but at least make it a little less restrictive.
Maybe, Eric, what we do is a matrix on there, just caregiver will be in primary residence and temporary residence, blood relative, paid compensated employee.
The simplest thing for me to do would be to strike the line that says the caregiver is a resident of the primary dwelling. It just doesn't really matter then.
I'm not sure it
The
does.
the caregiver can be primary or secondary dwelling.
If you recall, the reason why we kind of went this way originally, which was not even discussed as an issue at the last meeting, we were trying to guard against, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody just moving in and claiming they were a caregiver. And I think that's what the concern was. Not that there shouldn't be a caregiver available at one place or the other.
So Daniel,
we
your
probably
legal
could
counsel.
be a little more specific in our language.
These are all fair game, and I think right now you're in the land of policy and how you want this to work. So there really aren't any legal issues. When I've seen this, like I mentioned, most often is in very rural settings, and I haven't seen these issues come up because it's, large lot, there's not a huge proliferation of it. The biggest problem is when the person dies and they end up with two dwellings there and they just never take it off. And that is unlikely to be a big issue in an urban setting where there are a lot more people watching and closer neighbors. So I don't see that as a real problem here. What you've just described, I think, is correct. Because all of us are headed that way ourselves, and we understand that you know, are our kids gonna, like, move in and take care of us? I don't think so. So it may not be a blood relative. You know, it's not, there are legal prohibitions against attempting to define family in an overly restrictive way. There are constitutional provisions there, but that's not what's happening here. So these don't really raise legal concerns so much as policy concerns. I think you're hitting the issues that matter. And you're hearing from people who actually are gonna need to use this right now.
So what you're saying, if I can do this, is we don't need to specify where the caregiver lives. That's a policy question. It's not.
Correct, you don't need to.
It's up to
One
the
or the
council to
other.
decide where you want to
Right.
live. Totally up to you. And then whether they're related by blood or marriage, that's not a legal question really either.
It's not a legal question, but it kind of raises, it's going to be a little difficult to watchdog that as the regulator here. I mean, that'd be the planner's job, I would think, but it's not easy to verify that sort of thing. Unless you're willing to launch into a lot of documentation, you might just let it go by.
Okay, the public comment period is still open. I think there was a couple more people that wanted to address the council. Let's get through that and then we'll revisit this.
Doug Bortwell, 34608 Northwest 11th. So this is a municipal code, and my question is, if this overrides CCNRs in a neighborhood, it takes precedence, and if in a sense it violates them, which is a case that appears to be the situation for me, it just violates those CCNRs, takes precedence, overrules land use.
There's two responses. One is that keep in mind that this would be limited to a lot that is 1 acre or larger. So all of the subdivisions in the city don't have lots that are 1 acre or larger. The question of whether this overrides the CCNRs is really a legal question.
One of the few. You want to talk about now or wait till we're done with public?
Yeah, I think what we're going to do is get through the public hearing part, and then we're going to close it, and we'll address these, because this is going to go on for a while, I think.
We actually had that question come up from planning commission too, and I think what we determined, it depends on the CCNRs in the community, and also, I think there was a certain situation example that you had to get like 80% of the vote in that homeowners association or CCNR or whatever to pass something like that. So it wasn't, I thought
There's a specific issue related to these folks, CCNRs, and their HOA. The bigger question, though, in my mind, is does this override the local CCNRs? And the answer, in my opinion, is it's irrelevant to the CCNRs. The city has the authority to do this. The question of what's in the CCNRs is really up to the homeowners association. The city can enact zoning laws that may not be what the CCNRs state, but the HOA can enforce their own CCNRs regardless. Dan, would I say that any better?
Eric is a lawyer, and it shows.
Anything else?
Yeah, and then the other thing that came up was that this is for properties 1 acre and greater, and so for smaller properties, we're gonna use ADU code to get something similar. So, that's kind of.
Okay, thank you.
Al Philo, 152 West 15th Street. You know, I believe in the KISS method, keep it simple. You know, do we even need this code? You know, let the people move the place in, you know? And, you know, who's gonna enforce this anyway? You know, are the cops gonna do it? Are the public works, the lawyer, you know, just keep it simple. Look at it, do your best judgment, but, you know, with all this constitutional law we had, you know, is this tonight, are we violating somebody's rights or something? You know, by doing this? I don't know. But God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fortunately, I didn't get off the train in time for that one.
Okay, seeing that no one else is stepping up to the podium, I'll close the public comment at 8:25, turn it back over to the council for discussion and questions.
Well, the first thing up there, caregiver residence of primary dwelling, I think that's probably strikeable. because the concept that Dennis brought up, and as we expanded farther on it, I don't see that that's, going to be a real necessity there, or it's going to limit the property. And to the HOA thing, I think that the HOA or CC&Rs would override, sure, it's permitted, so is a four-story house may be permitted, but if CC&Rs prohibit it, you aren't going to do it.
Just as an illustration, we have a home occupation code, which allows people to have a business in their house, being an accountant or whatever it is the business is that they are. Some CC&Rs don't allow any home occupations, but the city has a home occupation code. We will permit it, but it's up to the residents of the homeowners association to deal with their
Yeah, I don't think the
question.
city should enforce CC&Rs.
No, we don't. We don't.
And I'm not sure about the thing about blood or marriage, whether that's a necessity, because you could have a compensated employee doing that job.
It also doesn't reflect domestic partners.
Oh, yeah, this is 21st century, we gotta do that too. Yep.
Domestic partners can be married in the state of Washington.
They can, but they aren't always.
That's true. Well, that's like a boyfriend.
So if we strike that, or is this something we want to do?
We've done a lot of modifications to this ordinance now. Are we comfortable that we can move that along tonight, or should we table this to the next meeting and get these
We can
changes?
table this to the next meeting. I just want to make sure that I understand what the consensus is of
Right.
these policy questions. I'm hearing individuals talk, but I'm not getting a general consensus from the entire council.
I think we're pretty comfortable with the revisions that we've discussed. I'm comfortable with what we
So
have.
just to reiterate, because my brain's sometimes a little slow at this time. Caregiver, strike sub 1, the caregiver is a resident of the primary building. Strike that, and then strike sub 2, related to blood and marriage.
Yes.
Yep, and make
There's
the
consensus
correction
I can
for
do.
square footage.
The correction to 1920 or 16.
If we're in agreement on that, can we move ahead tonight, or should we still table it?
Oh, the fire, you wanted to talk to somebody about the fire?
That's in the building code.
Okay, then we're good.
Incorporate references to the structural specialty code and the modular home. I don't know what the code is called for setting those up. I think there are enough things in here, and this is significant enough, that we should revise this according to what we hear and bring it back at the next meeting. That's simple enough to do.
Does the planning commission need to sniff at it, or just have Eric do it?
No, I just think we just make, again, we've made so many changes to it, I'm concerned that we won't capture everything in the ordinance, and I think it's better if we capture it in the ordinance, get a clean copy, bring it to the council, everybody read it one more time, and then pass it. I mean, it's 2 more weeks, I'm sorry about that.
But does that prove, what the changes we're going to make wouldn't really affect them, would it, to apply and to get the ball rolling? Because we're not really changing anything
Farm doesn't exist yet, does it?
primary to what they want to do.
They're not gonna be able to get a permit until we get the ordinance passed, but.
Well, I'm just asking in
so-
the essence of time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Dan?
I would advise them go ahead and start the process. I mean, we're just talking about what this ordinance is, the details of it. It is going to pass, I am guessing. And also, there's nothing to stop the city from starting to process this. And as we know, zoning compliance is complaint-driven. We don't have a zoning police.
Yeah, I just want to help them get started. You know,
Oh,
that
yeah,
was my
fair enough.
intent there, not to circumvent the law.
Fair enough. So with that, we will move on, and we will revisit this at the next city council meeting, have a clean copy of the ordinance in front of us. It will just come back to the council, and at that time, be ready for adoption.
Just for the benefit of the audience, this would not be a public hearing. This would just
For the
be-
next council meeting, no.
At the next
It'll
council
just strictly
meeting,
be,
it's not necessarily
yeah.
to continue, we're not
Yeah.
continuing the hearing, Dan.
Yeah.
Though, could you share the draft with
Absolutely.
Ms. Reed?
Absolutely.
It'll be on the council site, right?
It will be on the council site prior to the next meeting, yes.
So we're not, it's not necessary for us to come to the next meeting
We'd
unless.
love to see you.
You don't want to come to our meeting, come on.
We can even get you some of the reserved
Bring
seats.
another
All right,
crowd.
no,
But that help you
We'll be
get
fine.
started?
it'll be fine.
That helps you get started, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, we're moving things along. We haven't found a place to put on it, but.
Okay.
yeah, we're-
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
So we do have one more ordinance on the agenda this evening. It's 8:30. I better check with the council, make sure everybody's okay.
Keep it rolling.
We'll probably get this done in just a few minutes. Okay. So, yeah, this is ordinance 2019-09. It's for council member or mayor compensation ordinance. And Dustin Bailey, our finance manager, will be presenting.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a fairly simple ordinance, so hopefully it doesn't take us a whole lot of time. But the Center Municipal Code does not currently have language allowing mayors or council members to elect and not receive compensation connected to their positions. Ordinance 2019-10 modifies the Center Municipal Code Title 2, Chapter 2.80, adding language in a simple procedure allowing elected officials to opt to not receive compensation for their positions. And this allows them to follow their personal beliefs, which we think is important. The ordinance doesn't have any budget impact, and staff is recommending that the council approve ordinance 2019-10 in its entirety. Any questions?
You're right, it's pretty simple.
I thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I do too. The way it works now, they just don't sign and don't get paid.
The way it's set up right now, elected officials cannot opt to not receive compensation.
We got our
There's
hands
no option for them.
Just change
And
it.
there are some council members who have requested that this be corrected.
Adamantly.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, just for clarification, this was noticed as a public hearing, so.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so I will go ahead and open it up. 7:32, 7:33, it's a public
8:30.
hearing, if there's any.
8:33.
Oh, excuse me, 8:30.
Time passes quickly when you're having fun.
That's my time. 8:33 for public comment. If anybody would like to comment on it, please step to the podium and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Come on down.
Seeing nobody stepping up to the podium, I'm going to close the public comment period and turn it back over to council, and there is a recommended motion on the screen there.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2019-10, amending the La Center Municipal Code, Title 2, Chapter 2.80, which will be effective upon the date of adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 2019-10, amending the La Center Municipal Code, Title 2, Chapter 2.80, which will be effective on the date of adoption. It's an ordinance, so can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Boff?
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Strobehn?
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. So one other item on the agenda, and that's for adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening.